This is not a concept. This is not a simulation. This is Project Rainier, Amazon's $11 billion bet to build one of the world's largest artificial intelligence data centers in the middle of an Indiana cornfield. It's a project described by those building it as surreal in its speed, from dirt fields to a fully operational mega project in about a year. But this entire cluster, built for the AI giant Anthropic, is missing one critical component. The one thing the entire world says is essential. There are no NVIDIA GPUs inside. Amazon is spending billions to build an AI empire without the king. Is this the biggest strategic gamble in modern tech history? Or is it an $11 billion speculative bubble built on hype that's about to burst?
To comprehend the scale of this gamble, you must first deconstruct the speed. Surreal is the word used by the people on the ground, and the timeline supports it. In late 2022, around the very time OpenAI launched ChatGPT and kicked off the global AI arms race, Amazon was quietly shopping for a site. They weren't just looking for land, they were looking for power. They began talking to utility companies like American Electric Power. Ashley Sangivo, who helped steer the deals, said they introduced the concept of an Indiana data center to Amazon, and they basically said, "What do you have?" They pointed Amazon to a location with a massive volume of extra high voltage transmission lines and a substantial substation. By the spring of 2023, Amazon was making site visits. A year later, the deal was official, an $11 billion investment, the largest single capital investment in the history of Indiana. Then the clock started. Amazon broke ground in September 2024. By October 2025, just 13 months later, 7 of these massive buildings were fully operational, filled with hundreds of thousands of AI chips. Josh Salabedra, the site leader who has been building data centers with Amazon for 14 years, moved from the West Coast to oversee the build. His assessment was blunt. "Never seen us do a project this quickly. It's been the most exciting part of it." Why so fast? In his words, that's the customer demand right now. As Amazon saw the AI and machine learning wave coming, they changed it to a different building type. This isn't minor detail. This is a crucial distinction. Other tech giants like Meta have famously put up tents in Ohio to build as fast as possible. Amazon is quick to point out that this is different. AWS CEO Matt Garman stated, "It's not just fast, but it is secure and reliable AWS infrastructure. And so it's not a tent out there in the field. It is an industrial enterprise-scale data center." They are building a fortress, and this fortress is being built to withstand a war. But the most fascinating part of this fortress is the weapon inside.
Project Rainier is, behind its concrete walls, the largest cluster of non-NVIDIA chips in the world. It runs entirely on Amazon's own custom-designed silicon, the Trainium 2 chip. This isn't a new strategy for Amazon. It's the culmination of a decade-long plan. Amazon has been quietly designing its own chips since 2013. In 2015, it bought the Israeli chip startup Annapurna Labs. From that acquisition came a torrent of in-house hardware. First came Nitro, a specialized chip to offload network and storage tasks from their main servers. Then, in 2018, came Graviton, their own ARM-based server chip to compete with Intel. In 2019, they released their first AI chip, Inferentia, for running AI models. And in 2021, they launched Trainium 1, their first chip designed for training them. But it wasn't an immediate success. Critics pointed to weak hardware specs and poor software integration. In a candid admission, Prasad Kalyan Raman, an AWS infrastructure VP, essentially agreed. He told CNBC, quote, "I fully admit, Trainium 1, it was our first generation chip, and that absolutely was a learning chip, both from an architecture perspective as well as a software perspective," end quote. But, he continued, Trainium 2 and then Trainium 3 is where we're quite excited about our cost-competitive nature. Trainium is what's known as an ASIC, an application-specific integrated circuit. Unlike an NVIDIA GPU, which is a powerful jack-of-all-trades that can handle graphics, scientific computing, and AI, an ASIC is built for one and one only purpose. In this case, training AI models. This purpose-built design is the key to Amazon's entire $11 billion gamble. It unlocks a three-layered strategic advantage. First, cost. Amazon's own CEO, Andy Jassy, claimed in July that Trainium 2 offers 30 to 40% better price performance than rival GPU instances. Second, and perhaps more important, availability. The AI boom created, in the words of one analyst, massive backups for NVIDIA chips. If you're Amazon, you can't afford to have your multi-trillion-dollar cloud business bottlenecked by a single supplier. By building their own, they don't have to wait online for Jensen to give you what you need. Third, total control. Prasad Kalyan Raman explained the core philosophy. When you're able to control the stack all the way from the lowest layer, you're able to build the right set of capabilities that these model providers want, right? You don't need to add all the other capabilities that you don't need, end quote. No wasted silicon, no extra features, just pure, optimized AI training. But to prove this strategy works, Amazon needed a massive, flagship customer willing to bet their entire business on this new, unproven chip. They found one in Anthropic.
Founded in 2021 by former OpenAI researchers, Anthropic is the creator of the AI model Claude and is one of OpenAI's most formidable rivals. It's focused on building safe and secure AI, primarily for business clients. The relationship isn't just a simple client-vendor one, it's a deep, symbiotic alliance. Amazon has invested some $8 billion into the company. In return, Anthropic has used AWS as its primary cloud provider since Amazon's first major investment in 2023. One expert stated it flatly: if you think about Anthropic, it really doesn't exist without Amazon. The multiple multi-billion-dollar investments Amazon's made in the company is the reason why Anthropic is a player today. In this alliance, Anthropic gets a dedicated, reliable, and cost-effective fire hose of compute power. Amazon gets the ultimate proof of concept for its anti-NVIDIA strategy. However, Anthropic is also hedging its bets. In a sign of just how desperate the search for compute has become, Anthropic just announced its largest deal to date with Google, giving it access to up to 1 million of Google's own custom AI chips, their TPUs. When asked about this, Anthropic's leadership said the demand for their models is so high, the only way to serve it is a multi-chip strategy. They are, quote, getting the capacity that we can wherever we can. This is the chaotic, frantic landscape of the AI arms race.
And this is the kind of in-depth analysis we do every week, breaking down the biggest stories in tech and business. If you're getting value from this investigation, take a second to hit that subscribe button. It ensures you won't miss our next deep dive. This is why, back in Indiana, Amazon is building its new chips, Trainium 3, developed hand-in-hand with Anthropic, ready to deploy them at scale. Which brings us to the central conflict. Is this frantic $11 billion build-out a rational response to unprecedented demand? Or is it a classic speculative bubble?
The entire industry is currently on an unprecedented spending spree. We've all heard the announcements. Meta is building its 2-gigawatt Hyperion data center in Louisiana. OpenAI has floated plans for a 1-gigawatt Stargate site. The numbers are so large, they have become almost abstract. This has analysts deeply worried about a massive overbuild. One expert told CNBC, "I think they're still building on a proposition that we may not end up seeing be realized. It's just crazy how much building is going on." Another analyst, watching the flood of trillion-dollar announcements, was even more blunt. "I am not cashing any of the checks OpenAI is writing right now. We don't know how the power is going to work to power these data centers, and a lot of what they're announcing is fairly speculative." The historical parallel is the dot-com bubble. In the late 90s, companies spent billions laying fiber optic cable, convinced internet demand would grow infinitely. When the bubble burst, 90% of that dark fiber was left unused, a multi-billion-dollar monument to speculative mania. Today, critics worry these massive data centers are the new dark fiber. When asked about these AI bubble fears, Amazon's Matt Garman pushed back. Not for us in particular. I think others may have maybe more speculative investments out there." Amazon's argument is that its deals are not speculative. One expert at Amazon's partner, AEP, clarified, "These deals all sound great on paper, but they only materialize when they're actually racked and loaded and usable by the customer, and Amazon is incredible at that." Prasad Kalyanaraman from AWS reinforces this, pointing out that while many providers talk about gigawatts of capacity, they don't tell you when they're going to get to gigawatt scale. What we have with Rainier is a real thing, and Amazon has the receipts to prove it. This isn't a project built hoping a customer will come. It was built because the customer is already there, and they are demanding more. As of today, Anthropic is already running about 500,000 Trainium chips in Indiana. And according to Amazon, it's going so well that they've actually doubled down in that order, and we expect we'll be running more than 1 million Trainium 2 chips by the end of this year. This demand is real. It is massive, and meeting it at this speed comes at a staggering cost. It's a cost that is not just measured in billions of dollars, but in gigawatts of power and millions of gallons of water. And it's a bill being footed in large part by the small community of New Carlisle, Indiana.
This is the part of the story most AI analysis videos miss, the soul of the conflict, the friction between digital ambition and physical reality. To run 1 million AI chips, you need an almost unimaginable amount of power. When all 30 buildings are complete, Project Rainier is expected to consume 2.2 gigawatts of electricity. Let's put that number in perspective. That is as much electricity as 1.5 million average American homes. The local utility, Indiana-Michigan Power, or INM, is now facing a demand shock. INM stated that the 2 new data centers coming to its territory, Amazon's and a new $2 billion Google site, will consume almost as much power as their entire existing electric load. Their peak power demand is forecast to more than double in just 6 years, from 2.8 gigawatts in 2024 to over 7 gigawatts by 2030. This has led to very real fears from local residents. Dan Caruso, who had 100 protest signs made, worries about water issues and whether the power grid can be able to supply Amazon, GM, and the town. He's worried about brownouts. And then there's the question, where does 2.2 gigawatts of new power come from? Currently, 53% of INM's power comes from a nearby nuclear plant, but 35% comes from a coal plant that is slated for closure in 2028. To fill this gap and meet Amazon's demand, INM is now in the final stages of acquiring a natural gas plant in Ohio.
This creates a direct conflict with Amazon's own corporate pledge to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2040. When pressed on this, Amazon's infrastructure VP admitted the path from here to 2040 is not going to be linear. He added that, "Are there going to be needs for gas-based generation? I think there absolutely will be." Beyond power, the project will also consume millions of gallons of water for cooling, and it sits in the middle of a 1,200-acre site that includes 10 acres of natural wetland, which Amazon now says it is revising designs to minimize impact on. For locals, it feels like an invasion. "It's just difficult to keep losing farmland," one resident said, "and this took a lot of farmland." Another, who was initially for some of the growth, confessed, "My friends tried to tell me you can't let them come in because once they get their toe in there, they'll want more, and that's exactly what happened." In exchange for this massive footprint, the state and county have given Amazon a sweetheart deal. Indiana offers a tax exemption for the state's 7% tax on electricity. The county granted Amazon over $4 billion in tax exemptions, and state legislation will save it some $4 billion more over 50 years. The promised return? Close to 9,000 temporary construction jobs, which will eventually become just 1,000 long-term jobs.
So we return to the fundamental question. Is Amazon's $11 billion gamble in Indiana a strategic masterstroke or a speculative bubble about to burst? The truth is that it's both. The bubble argument is physical and undeniable. The project is speculative in the sense that it's being fueled by a gold rush hype cycle, and it is placing an insane, perhaps unsustainable strain on local resources before the long-term economic viability of generative AI is fully proven. But the gamble argument is strategic and powerful. Amazon is correct that this is not speculative. The customer is real. The demand is real. Anthropic is already there, and they are demanding double. Project Rainier is not just a data center. It is a declaration of independence. It is Amazon's $11 billion statement that it will no longer be held hostage by a single supplier. It is a bet that the future of AI will not be run on one-size-fits-all GPUs, but on custom, in-house, application-specific silicon. And Amazon has no intention of slowing down. They are, in their own words, rapidly adding new capacity all over the place.
But what do you think? Is this $11 billion project a necessary step to win the AI war? Or is it a catastrophic overbuild that ignores the very real environmental and community costs? Let me know your verdict in the comments below. The final word comes from Amazon's own leadership. When asked if this build-out will ever be finished, the answer was telling. "I don't know that we'll be done ever. We're going to continue to build as our customers need more capacity."